Take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Infrastructure Week. My name is Michelle Jolin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Results for America. So in celebration of Infrastructure Week, today's session will focus on the workforce development provisions and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, especially the ways that cities can promote equity in their infrastructure projects. As always, we're going to hear from our mayors to get their strategic insights and advice on how to do this successfully. But first, it's my pleasure to welcome Paige Shevlin, who is a strategic advisor for infrastructure workforce development at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Paige is going to be sharing the best practices for incorporating workforce development strategies into cities' bipartisan infrastructure law projects. So Paige, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Michelle. I'm very excited to be here today to speak with all of you, especially during Infrastructure Week. Very exciting. I want to talk with you about two things today. One is I want to explain what the U.S. Department of Transportation's vision is for what a strong construction workforce program looks like for all the capital projects that we're funding across the country. And then second, I want to give some information about how you can actually get some of those initiatives funded. So I'm going to start with the vision. I want to make sure that everyone understands what we see as a prime example of construction workforce programs. We have three components to what we want to see in labor and workforce plans from cities and states when they're applying for competitive grants. It's also what we're trying to encourage, through formula programs. Number one, we want to see that there are good paying jobs with union choice that are being created. And that can be showed by having a partnerships with unions, having a project labor agreement. It can also be showed by just documenting the wages that are going to be paid in these jobs and how those compare to the local area. And then second, we want to see that there are training programs that are being designed and expanded and scaled to help people get into those jobs. And primarily here, we are looking at the opportunity of registered apprenticeship because registered apprenticeship is such a great way in the trades, already has a lot of density to make sure that that people have the opportunity to be trained while also earning a good solid wage. And that does involve leadership from the cities or from the project owners. What I mean by that is that oftentimes project owners will set the apprenticeship rate that they want to see on the project. And so if the higher that is set, then the more training opportunities that project is going to afford for people who are new to that craft and the industry of construction overall. We like to see apprenticeship utilization rates that are set somewhere between 10 and 20%, so that 10 and 20% of the project hours are performed by apprentices. Of course, there's other sorts of training programs that can be utilized to make sure that people are ready for these jobs, and then we want to make sure that those training programs are focused on underrepresented populations. There are pathways for people who have not traditionally had a opportunity in these jobs. And I do want to step back a little bit and provide the why of that. We are so focused on this opportunity to diversify, the infrastructure workforce, because infrastructure is one of the few sectors that pays well to individuals who do not have a college degree. The wages for the infrastructure jobs are typically about 30% higher than for other sorts of jobs with similar sorts of education requirements. And that 30% makes a big difference in people's lives and their ability to support their families. So we really want to see these jobs be opened more to everyone who so that everyone has the opportunity to get them and to be trained for them. And that does mean making sure that the training programs are meeting the needs of those underrepresented populations. The third area that we're focused on is the hiring and retention policies of the project owners, because we know it's not just about training. So it's not just a lack of skills or training opportunities that has kept, women and people of color and other populations out of these jobs. Some of it is also, the way that hiring is done. It's been very informal sometimes. It relies on networks, which then has biases, built into that. So we really want to make sure that the hiring policies are equitable. And one way that we are pushing one strategy there is the use of local and economic hiring preferences. Local and economic hiring preferences were previously not really allowed until the infrastructure law was passed. And with the infrastructure law, local and economic hiring preferences are now allowed on all of our major capital projects. We have done some work. Hopefully we'll be able to share a report soon. We've identified about 20 entities across the country that are using these local and economic hiring practices. And we really want to see that number grow. And we have already seen that as we put out some of our competitive grants. We have had cities and others, come to us and say, we will use a local and economic hiring policy as a part of this project because we are incentivizing it. So that's one of the ways that we want to make sure that we will hire more people that are from local underrepresented populations. And just to say a little bit more about that, local and economic hiring preferences, they allow for hiring people from certain geographies. So the cities that use it, sometimes they will say, oh, we're going to hire 30% of people from these disadvantaged zip codes or census tracts with high unemployment. But it can also be used for individual economic characteristics. So there are other entities that say, well, we want 15% of our workforce to come from populations that have barriers to employment. And that includes people who don't have a high school degree or people who have had some form of involvement with the justice system, people who are on public benefits. So you can use those criteria that apply to individuals to also prioritize hiring. And that's a really good way to make sure that you're getting to populations that have not traditionally had access to these jobs. So again, I'm just going to recap what it is we want to see in these programs. All in all, right, we want to see good jobs, good paying jobs that are being created, training programs that are helping people get into them, and then a direct pathway between those training programs into jobs. That's either done typically through a local and economic hiring practice, or it's sometimes done through direct entry agreements, where it's set up in advance that 20% of the apprentices or of the project labor hours will come from this training program that serves a particular disadvantaged population. All those together will really make sure that we have a good jobs with a diverse workforce. We are seeing some great examples of this, of cities that are doing all these things combined. And just one example I would give from our RAISE grants is in the city of Inglewood, right, where they do have those local hire requirements, the training programs, and the direct entry into registered apprenticeship, as well as I think a registered apprenticeship rate of about 20%. Next, I wanted to talk about funding, right? How do we get funding for some of these workforce development efforts? We are the Department of Transportation, not the Department of Labor. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of funding for workforce development specifically. But we do have some that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of. Most importantly, when all of you are applying for Department of Transportation grants, whether that's RAISE or MEGA or Infra, we have our Port Infrastructure Development Program, we have rail grants. All of those grants allow for grant dollars to be used for workforce development to support jobs on the project. And so what I would highly recommend is that you put in your budget when you are applying the amount of funding that you will need to support jobs on the project. To give you an example of this, the city of Philadelphia won a RAISE grant. It was $25 million, I believe. And they put in $500,000 in their budget for workforce development. And that really is just a line item in their budget. And, you know, eventually they will have to show that that is going to be for jobs on the project. But we're not asking for a lot of that justification up front. I think the department really values workforce development. We know that it's important to make these projects successful, and we want to see that put in as a funding item. But it does have to be put in during the application phase. So please think about that. That funding can be used for a short-term training program. It could be used to help fund your a pre-apprenticeship program that is feeding directly into that project. It does have to be just for that project, but it could also be used to fund, you know, we hear about some cities that have an on-the-job a jobs coordinator, which is basically someone who's responsible for making sure that recruitment and hiring happens for that project. So that's another example of how we have specified that those sorts of funds can be used in addition to short-term training. And it can also be used for supportive services if that's a part of your workforce development plan. So for example, if you need, you know, help with giving workers money for transportation or tools or anything like that to keep them on the project, to make sure that you have high retention rates, that could also be funded. So definitely think about that. We also have done a lot of guidance for state DOTs about how they can use their formula funding on workforce development. I know I'm talking to cities here, but to the extent that you have a strong relationship with your state, I would highly recommend working with them to see how some of those state formula dollars can be unlocked for workforce development, because that is $48 billion per year that states are getting for their, you know, basic highway formula programs. That is the money they're using for, you know, all their major projects. But a small percent of $48 billion is still a lot of money when it comes to workforce development. And we are seeing states start to take this on and to take a small portion of those highway funds and use it for workforce development, which of course could be used to benefit cities as well. Last thing I just want to mention in terms of funding is that we do have a fantastic partnership with the Department of Labor, and we have worked with them to make this Building Pathways to Infrastructure a funding opportunity available. It's $80 million this year, and it's going to be up to $200 million over the whole life cycle of the program. And that grant is available for many of the professional and technical occupations within construction. It can't be used on the trades for reasons I don't want to get into. I'm happy to follow up on that if there's questions, but what it can be used for is some of the professional jobs within the construction industry, construction management, for example, civil engineering technicians, transportation planners. A lot of those may be jobs that you actually need in your city, right? In your city Department of Transportation or in your transit agency, and it also does cover transit mechanics. So definitely take a look at that opportunity as well and think about how it could also help meet your needs within the construction industry more broadly. I will close my remarks there and happy to take questions when there's time for it.
Paige, thank you so much. It's exciting to hear about what an ambitious agenda the department has, and you know, especially this focus on advancing job opportunities for people of all skill levels. So thank you for all of that. I'm going to invite the audience to ask questions of Paige while she's here. As you think about your question and formulate your question, I'm first going to turn to Mayor Greenberg of Louisville to come off of mute and to describe what Louisville is doing with infrastructure dollars to improve the job pipeline for workers of color and women, especially those who've been traditionally underrepresented in construction jobs. So Mayor Greenberg, can we have you come off mute? Perfect. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And it's wonderful to join you all. And I'm proud to talk about a program that we have in Louisville and throughout our entire region. You'll hear me referring to Kentuckiana. That's the clever Kentucky and Indiana, because the state of Indiana is about a whopping quarter of a mile away from me, where I'm currently sitting across the Ohio River. So we often refer to that about our region in many different ways. And our pre-apprenticeship program for the construction industry is called Kentuckiana Builds. And it's been a partnership of really three groups. One is our local workforce board, which is Kentuckiana Works. Another is the governor's office, which provides about half of the funding through the state, through the WIOA dollars to this program. And the third organization that's part of the partnership is the Louisville Urban League, which has actually run this program for the past 7 years. And since federal dollars provide the money for the workforce training, where Urban League has been critically helpful, just one of the ways is that there's so much more that we need to do to help support people who are looking to enter the construction workforce with getting that first job in this area. And so whether it's helping with food or whether it's helping with shelter and moving or transportation, some folks might need help with criminal record expungement. These are all services that the Urban League either provides on its own through existing programs, or it certainly can bring in another organization or support group to help provide these to people who are going through the construction training program. And Kentuckiana Builds, just as we were just hearing about, is really directly targeted to help to attract, train, and place underrepresented groups in the construction industry, which is primarily focused in our city on African American and women who have been historically underrepresented in the construction field. And so also partnering with the Urban League has been tremendously helpful to identify people and to have credibility to attract people, particularly Black members of our community that historically might have felt like they're not welcome or they don't have a place in the construction industry, when that could not be further from the truth today. That's exactly who we're trying to attract more of. One other key thing about this program is that we are working with employers and unions because the training is critically important. But what's even more important is having a job at the end of the training so that people can see the payoff for their training and for their effort, that they get a good paying career path job. They feel more than ever that they have a renewed sense of hope and opportunity, and that hopefully they tell their friends and family about it to attract even more people. And so we are working with employers from the beginning on job placement, but also on ensuring that our curriculum and the certifications match up with what local employers are looking for. To date, over the past several years, Kentuckiana Builds, I'm proud to say, has graduated over 500 people, and over 350 of them got a job immediately in the construction industry upon graduation. The exact stats through March were 513 people have completed training. 449 of those were minorities, and about 130 were female. So we still have a ways to go to attract more women into this program and into the field. So that is an area that we are focused on improving. One other thing that our colleagues that are focused on this program have learned is that getting a job isn't the only barrier that exists. And so we are trying to help with other things. That's one of the areas where partners like Urban League comes in. Also, we have a great partnership with Goodwill, because in the construction industry, as you all know, you're not going to the same place to work every day necessarily. Now, in infrastructure projects, you might have a longer term project, which is great. But that you're going to move eventually. And so transportation in a city like Louisville that does not have the strongest public transportation system, that is critical, and that has been a barrier. And so we partner with Goodwill that has a program called Cars to Work, which helps graduates buy affordable and dependable used cars. And so they have a screening mechanism to really ensure that people aren't being taken advantage of, that the price is appropriate. And so that's something that we're going to continue to expand, but has been very helpful also for some of our participants. And then, we're also going to continue to work on continued placements, continued opportunities. Once a graduate does have their first job, we want to continue to work with them to give them promotion opportunities throughout their career to continue to rise through the ranks, if you will. And also on coaching and mentoring, because it is a very different life. If they came from a non-construction industry and now they're moving into the construction industry, we want to continue to have people from the industry that can help provide mentorship so that they have even more opportunities as well. So we see this as a great program, working with the state, the city, the Urban League, Goodwill, partnering with our unions. We're working on bringing other educational institutions into this. partners like our community college, but also some other education trainers that aren't sort of an accredited university, but that can help provide the skills and the training that partner with our unions. And so we're excited about continuing to grow this program. I'd love to add a zero onto those 500 graduates. So we're going to continue to work on it, and we look forward to partnering with others on it as well. So hopefully that's a helpful little bit of insight into what we've been doing here in Louisville.
Mayor Greenberg, thank you so much. And we have posted in our chat the case study that we've done on Kentuckiana builds that includes some of the best practices in workforce development. I know you have to leave by 2:30, but I wanted to just open, I hope you can stay for a couple more minutes in case there are questions for Mayor Greenberg or for Paige Shevlin. We have a question from Carly Foster. Do you want to go ahead, get off mute and ask the question?
Sure. This question was about the infrastructure jobs funding, and if there's existing programs that are already citywide to support infrastructure, workforce development. I know that the program can be, the funding can be used to expand in new geographies, but could we also use it to expand the same program, like to deepen and expand the impact of the same program within the same geographies? I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're asking. Yeah, for our competitive grant funding, the funds do have to be used for jobs on the project. So, my recommendation would be that if you have an existing program, to just, feel like you can have a good enough record keeping that you will be able to use that funding specifically just to support individuals who are coming out of that program and going to jobs on the project, and spending those dollars on supportive services, like Mayor Greenberg was talking about, for example, transportation would be a great way to do that, where this person is coming to work on the project, and then we're going to use these funds to provide the supportive services that are necessary to make sure that they will be able to get to work and will be able to be coming back, day to day.
Leo, I see you have a hand up. Do you want to ask your question?
That'd be all right. Thank you. It's for Mayor Greenberg. So for the program that's Goodwill Cars to Work, I wanted to ask a little bit about the mechanism there. Does the city of Louisville have some sort of cooperative agreement with Goodwill as a part of their workforce programming, or do y'all help workforce program providers throughout the city partner with Goodwill so that they can directly work with their students and applicants to then get transportation for jobs?
The latter. We don't directly fund this program. Now, we do provide support to Goodwill for other programs that they have. So we are a close partner with Goodwill. They have a very strong program here in Louisville, where they're running a program with a van that goes around to various homeless encampments and gives homeless individuals opportunity to have employment, and then also tries to get them into training programs as well, or connect them with other services that they need. We do provide funding for that. We're going to continue to provide funding. There are a couple of other programs that we've, just in my proposed budget that I proposed a couple of weeks ago, we've proposed funding for Goodwill. We do not fund this one directly, though. So we just work with other groups, whether it's workforce training groups or other organizations where we believe their constituents, their clientele could benefit from this program, to make sure that they're aware of it. One thing that we have noticed in this area and in so many areas, particularly when you're supporting people, lower income individuals that either have barriers to transportation, that don't have might not have Wi-Fi or as much computing power as we do, on our phones and at home, is ensuring that people that you want to take advantage of programs know about the programs is often so challenging. And so we're trying a whole host of new ways to try to directly communicate with individuals so that they're aware of these opportunities that exist.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a problem that I've heard quite a lot here in New Orleans, that transportation aspect for workforce. If there's any more information on just Goodwill and generally how that all works, that'd be really appreciated. Because it sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
we have a contact in the chat.
Okay, great.
One last question, Mayor Greenberg, before you leave, so can you tell us a little bit about how community engagement has been playing in developing these workforce efforts in your applications, and sort of give a little more flavor about what cities should be doing, what kind of relationships they should be building in order, and when the process of community engagement should be beginning in order to make sure that there's adequate community participation?
Yeah, well, one of the things I've seen, at least when it comes to community engagement for workforce, is truly understanding what the opportunities are, because we don't want to set people up for success where they don't have that placement at the end. And so this is a little bit different, in my opinion. It's a little bit different of community. You're engaging with the community to make sure they know of the opportunities, that you are addressing their needs that they have to ensure that job training is what they need. But you also need to do outreach to the business, the construction industry in this case, or if you're working for, we have another great program that Kentuckiana Works runs called Code Louisville, which is training people without higher education degrees how to become computer programmers and to get them started in that industry. We need to make sure that we've also done outreach into the business community in this case, so that we set people up for success. So as I mentioned earlier, that we're training them with the right skills that employers in our city are looking for, so that we can have the highest possible placement rate, and that the individuals that are going through the program are set up for success. They can continue to grow and have a true career, because oftentimes the people that are coming into this program, they haven't had a career. They've had jobs before, but what we're looking to do is provide skills and training so that they have a real career.
Really helpful. Paige, do you want to give us your thoughts on this as well around community engagement?
Yes, no, I think community engagement is pivotal, and similarly, I would say it's because to let communities know that these jobs exist, when they're coming, what the training pathways are to get into them. And also to make sure that the programs are meeting the community's needs, because communities tend to know best. And, especially, immigrant communities, for example, I've heard this from a number of, the local building trades unions, when they've built successful pre-apprenticeship programs that are getting in, people from immigrant communities, especially women from immigrant communities, they've worked with those community partners to construct those programs in a way that is culturally, sensitive to their needs, that respects, especially how many cultures view, their kind of guidelines around women in the workplace, and so that's been very important to bring in a more diverse workforce. And I was going to put in the chat, actually, we created a checklist on how to create a strong workforce and labor plan for all of our competitive grants, and it does get in a little bit to the importance of community engagement and of having some intentionality also in terms of how you think about the jobs that are in demand and the potential labor pool that you want to pull from, right? Like, who in your community is unemployed or underemployed, who could benefit from these, better jobs, and how use it to help lift those communities out of poverty. So definitely I'll put that in the chat, and that can provide more resources as well.
Thank you. Really helpful. So critical to engage the community to get a successful application. So thank you, Mayor Greenberg. Thank you, Paige. Really appreciate
Thank you for having us.
The input. And now we're going to turn to our other mayors. I'm very pleased to welcome Mayor Andy Shore of Lansing, Michigan, and Mayor Patricia Locke Dawson of Riverside, California. We're also joined by workforce experts, Darrell Byers, the CEO of Interise, and Julie Kao, Chief Planning Officer of Employ Milwaukee. Our very own Jamie is going from the Government Innovation Team at Bloomberg Philanthropies, is going to moderate this discussion. So Jamie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to Paige and to Mayor Greenberg. I found that discussion really riveting and so full of insights I think all cities can learn a little bit from, especially that supportive services piece, which I think is something we hear all the time often you can get people into a job, but the hard part is getting them to keep it when, their child wakes up with a fever or the bus doesn't come. And so making sure that we're linking together those supportive services. And now we're really excited to continue the conversation. So thank you to all of our panelists. I'm going to, because we know you have so many great insights to share, I'm just going to jump right in. And my first question is for Mayor Schor. Mayor Schor joined us back at our last workforce discussion with Secretary Raimondo. And in that discussion, Mayor Schor, you talked about Lansing being an EV charging hub and really working on the EV manufacturing and making sure that you have the workforce capacity to be able to meet that exciting new career opportunity. And the pathways for those people who may not, have a four-year college degree. Can you give us a little bit of an update on your progress there and the strategies that you're employing as a city to be able to fulfill that job pipeline?
Sure. Thank you for having me. And I apologize to everybody. I'm not on video. I am stuck in traffic. So I'm in my car. But this is such an important discussion and I appreciate being part of it. As some folks know, Lansing landed one of the GM Ultium battery plants. So, we have 1,700 jobs coming in, $2.7 billion of investment. And that is incredible. But sometimes when you land a lot of jobs, you don't have necessarily the workforce. So we're doing a lot of work on workforce. The first meeting that I had with the GM Ultium folks, which is a partnership of GM and LG, was with the HR director. It wasn't like the government affairs person. It was the HR director. How do we get workforce? So we're doing a lot of things. We're doing the traditional, working with our capital area, Michigan Works, so that people can be retrained and can, when they become unemployed or if they want to find a new job, they have options. So things are posted. But we're doing a lot of non-traditional things. We're trying to beef up our downtown. We're a capital city. So certainly, we're seeing the impacts of post-COVID future of work, but when young people come in or when anybody comes in and they want to choose where they're going to live, they want amenities. And one of the things that we're doing is we're investing about $20 million into a performing arts center in our downtown. And we're expecting a lot of people to want to be part of that, to live near that, to revitalize, to be part of the revitalization of our downtown. We're looking at housing. Housing is a hugely important component of workforce. We want housing for all incomes. We want housing for the young person just out of college, especially if they're from Michigan State University right next door. Go green. And I say that as a Wolverine, believe it or not. But we want to keep them here. We want to have housing that people can rent because a lot of folks are having rentals. We want to have neighborhood housing, and we want to make sure that the housing is up to code. And then you want to have housing for bigger families. And you want to have, higher end housing. You need to have all of that to have the workforce. People who are working at a GM plant or any other new development are going to be making, anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 to $120,000. It's you talk about a job that you can get without having to go to college. How about a good paying job you can get without having to go to college and without debt, which is incredible. I'll add a few other things and then I'll shut up. I apologize. But, our school districts are jumping in. Our Lansing School District is creating something called Lansing Tech, which is a technology high school where kids can go and they can get trained to be in the trades or nurse or a firefighter. That's hugely important, getting them at K-12. And then our community college, I know the mayor just said this, Mayor Greenberg said this, our community college is doing all kinds of advanced trainings for the trades, along with our unions who are doing union apprenticeship programs, and they put their own money into that. And they bring in folks who become union trained. We have one with our plumbers and pipe fitters. We have one with our IBW. We have one with our operating engineers. And then the last thing I'll mention, which also has come up, is transportation. Again, my downtown, we want people to live in downtown and in our neighborhoods, but the plant, which is right next to our assembly plant, is a good 15, 20 miles outside the city. It's actually technically part of the city, but it's further away. And our bus system, Lansing is in 2 counties and the bus system is primarily in 1 county. And our bus system just made a deal with the other county because nobody really cares about the border. They care about getting to work. So they made a deal to be able to bring people there and back. Transportation is hugely important, whether you can't afford a car or whether you're a young person, you just got out of college and you don't drive because you want to just hop the bus, and you can do that downtown. So having that has been really important. And then I know I said that was the last one, but finally, we have an equitable economic development program, and this was talked about as well by the US DOT, where we're pushing equity in learning economic development. So people who are doing work not just with the GM plant, but economic development in general, we're giving opportunity to those that haven't had opportunity in the past. So all of these pieces together make Ultium very happy, because it means we're going to be able to bring in 1,700 jobs and then some, because we know there are ancillary things that go along with a new plant, and we'll be able to have the job force for it. So we're really excited. And again, I think these are all pieces of a bigger puzzle, and you got to put all the pieces together to actually have the workforce and be able to fill the jobs.
Thank you so much, Mayor Schor. There was so much to unpack there, and hopefully we'll have time to come back to you. And I think it's really interesting when we think about, several years ago, cities were all competing against each other for, Amazon's second headquarters. And they were thinking about those, white collar jobs where you needed to have arts and culture and the housing and the transportation, really make it an amenity driven application. And I think we're really seeing now a moment where those infrastructure jobs need the same things, right? And that, as Paige said, these are good paying jobs. And so we want to make sure that the people that we want to get into those jobs also have all the other, amenities that a world-class city would have. I want to turn. Okay, sorry.
I'll also add to that. It's an incredible opportunity for our kids. We're average $40,000 salary in Lansing, and our kids want to get ahead. So now this is the opportunity for our kids. Sorry, and then I'll shut up.
You're good. You're good. I want to bring Mayor Locke Dawson into the conversation. Mayor Locke Dawson, in this year's State of the City, you discussed the importance of forging partnerships with the local school districts and community colleges, two themes we've already heard from both of your fellow mayors who've spoken today, to cultivate those workforce pipelines, including through internships. What strategies did you use to forge those? Because we know that those partnerships aren't always easy.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me here today. And for those of you that don't know, Riverside is in Southern California. I think some people don't know where we are. We're the 12th largest city in California. We have a population of about 320,000. I think we don't do anything without partnerships here in Riverside and in California in general. I mean, this is one of the things about being in whatever side of the aisle you're on, either a good thing or bad thing, but we're a Democrat majority state. So we don't do anything without generally project labor agreements and union forward agreements in anything that we do. But one of the things that's really important for us is workforce development, as this whole conversation is about. And I think it was the mayor of Louisville who said they were bringing in the community colleges, and we went sort of the opposite direction, and then where we started with our community colleges, and we developed articulation agreements between our K through 12 district into our community college districts. And then also they can go on to a 4-year program, or they can go into the trades. At the school district level, when I was on the school board before I became mayor, we established a pre-apprenticeship program for the skilled trades at one of our high schools that's since grown into a couple different schools. But then there's an articulation agreement to go into our community college, where our students come out with certifications and seals, and they can go right into the workforce. So this is something that's really important. So we have a number of different programs that we have there. We also have 2 big trade training centers here that we have that are in partnership with the state, our region, so our counties, our schools, our community college district, and the city. One is called the Industrial Tech Learning Center, and the other is called the IE Tech Trade Center. And these are wonderful partnerships between industry. They provide a lot of the funding. The schooling, the training comes in through the community college part. And then we have our workforce development through our other pipelines. So the Industrial Tech Learning Center is called InTech. That's been in existence for a long time now. There's a number of different skilled trades that come out of there. We also have a new one we're developing called the IE Tech Trade Center. We just got about a $35 million investment from the state on that. And so to your point about making sure that the needs of industry and the needs of the population match, that's where that comes together in those training centers. So they've been very successful so far. And we have a number of different things too. I'll just throw in there really quickly, but out of my office too, we're focusing on youth. So I have a youth training opportunity for youth ages 16 to 30. Those who are having difficulty getting jobs or having access to training, we have a $4.4 million program to train them. And then we also have as I mentioned, our high schools. And then also our folks who are formerly incarcerated and those who are struggling with homelessness. We also have several programs for them to get them to work and provide training opportunities for them. And lastly, one of the biggest things we're doing, I think, to support infrastructure is we're doing a citywide digital initiative where we are partnering with a private sector called private industry partner called Sci-Fi. They are laying high-speed internet throughout our entire city, 81 square miles. And it's a public-private partnership. We're both bearing some responsibility for it, but we will be the envy of every city because everybody will have access to high-speed internet where we are. So that is just a tiny, I think I probably went over what you asked me, Jamie, but that's a tiny snapshot of what we have going on in Riverside.
Oh, that's great. And I posted a link for people to learn more about InTech as a model of that collaboration with community colleges. And I think, just tying together something you said with what Paige said, we've all been hearing about the challenges in the labor market right now, right? And so how do you find those people who are somehow being left out of the labor market? So you're returning citizen population, you're unhoused. And, I think we all understand that there's real struggles for both of those populations to access these types of careers. And it takes a lot of intentionality to overcome those barriers and investment and hard work. And so glad to hear that Riverside and Louisville and Lansing are doing that hard work. I want to bring Darrell Byers into the conversation, who has a really unique perspective, I think, on our panel, because Darrell's been working to skill up entrepreneurs, minority small businesses, and particularly in the construction industry, to be able to capture more of this contracting power. And it's such a great opportunity. So Darrell, we'd love to hear about the strategies that you and Interise are using to help small businesses, especially those owned by people of color, be competitive and applying for the contracts that are coming out of these infrastructure programs.
Sure, great, thank you. Our mission at Interise is quite simple: to create an inclusive economy by supporting established small businesses that are BIPAC owned or operated in low and moderate income. And we've been doing this for over, just almost 20 years in about 80 cities. And we have trained over 10,000 small businesses during that time. And the impact really speaks for itself with these companies, creating 4 times more local jobs in the private sector and significantly increasing their annual revenue at the same time. The one reason our alumni companies grow and create more jobs are because they successfully secure contracts with local government or other anchor institutions. And our program specifically focus on these companies and how they can increase their revenue and hire employees to pursue procurement opportunities. So what does this mean? Right now, we have a huge opportunity with the infrastructure bill. Over $3 trillion that's been dedicated towards infrastructure. And if we miss out on this with minority-owned businesses, given this historic opportunity, the difficulty that women in BIPAC businesses have in securing small business loans, over half of our nation's potential entrepreneurs are sitting on the sidelines. So this is a huge opportunity for BIPOC businesses. As I mentioned, or as I should have mentioned, Interise has a research arm, and determined that the number one factor for sustainable growth for any small business is securing long-term public or private contracts. And what we also know is that minority businesses that go through our program, the Streetwise MBA at Interise, 50 to 100% of the people they hire come from the community they've been established in. So we know they're coming from low income communities and they're coming from the BIPOC community. So how does this work? We know that businesses average, after they take our course, 12% and create 4 times as many new jobs as the private sector. But this is an extraordinary number. BIPOC businesses who get contracts, multi-year contracts, grow their annual revenues an average of staggering 28 to 45%. That 2 or 3 times faster than their successful peer organizations. So recently we developed a minority supplier building program to help public and private sectors use this important moment to create sustainable programs to create scale and grow minority businesses. Right now, we work with a number of anchor institutions, a number of cities across the country. We have been working with companies like Honeywell, the offshore wind industry, the Urban League of Massachusetts, the state of Virginia, and cities of Houston, Charlotte, Louisville. We work with the Greater Louisville Inc. I know the mayor just left the call, and Mobile, to name a few, training companies how to be contract ready, be in the pipeline with these institutions so that they're ready to go. For a company like Honeywell, for example, they will be trained in the Honeywell model. So the Honeywell procurement staff will know these minority and women-owned companies have the training Honeywell needs in the industries they need to move forward and hire them to come in for these contracts. So, this also includes, really has to come from the top down. So it has to come from the head of these companies. It has to come from the mayors of these companies, the governors, and be willing to train their procurement staff on what to do different. And that these businesses are contract ready. They have the training, they have the resources, they know the bonding they need, they know the capital they need, investment they need to make in themselves. We've also been working over the last year with the Gates Foundation, working on economic mobility, what makes a good paying job. So teaching these businesses how to acquire and, more importantly, retain employees in this challenging employment market, as we all know. So we have incorporated a lot of this into our training, and we look forward to monitoring the results of that in the coming years.
That's so great. And I think one of the things for city leaders to really think about is, are you making the environment, your procurement environment, friendly for these businesses? Are you making your contracts so big that the small players don't have a door in, right? Are you making the bonding requirements so high that these new businesses can't compete? How can you work to lessen those barriers? And if we have time, I might come back to you, Darrell, on what you've been seeing, on cities that have been effectively meeting these goals, because we know a lot of times cities set really ambitious goals for WMBs and they fall short of them. And it's not because there aren't businesses that want to get their dollars. It's because getting, and being able to apply for those is so onerous that these small businesses really can't get a foot in. But I want to turn to Julie. Thank you, Julie. You've been waiting so patiently. We know that Employ Milwaukee and the City of Milwaukee have an innovative partnership, the Healthy Homes Construction Career, that focuses on both technical training for workers as well as technical assistance for small businesses. So some of those things that Darrell just talked about. Can you tell us a little bit more about your Healthy Homes program?
Absolutely. As you may know, the City of Milwaukee, unfortunately, we have a critical public health crisis here related to lead paint and our aging housing stock. And many of these homes are the ones where our unemployed and impoverished city residents live. So it's really an equity issue as well, an environmental justice issue. So the City of Milwaukee has made a large investment through the American Rescue Plan Act, where they've done a dual approach. So they've allocated $26 million to the city health department to put money out to do the actual lead abatement work within the homes. And that kind of ties into this project on a contractor aspect that I'll talk about in a second. But then they also gave Employ Milwaukee, and we're the Workforce Development Board serving Milwaukee County. They gave us $3 million to create a program that will let city residents underrepresented in construction careers, so mostly women and people of color, access those jobs through a training program. So to date, we've actually served 479 job seekers and over 50 businesses. And our model includes having several tracks. So if a job seeker comes to us with some type of construction experience, they can get the state of Wisconsin Department of Health Service lead abatement, lead worker, lead supervisor certifications at no cost, so that they can either create a crew and bid on jobs, or they can join another crew to work on these projects. And to give you kind of a scale, over 800 homes will get lead paint remediation within the next 2 years. So that's quite a few. The next level is for residents that, excuse me, come to us with maybe not a lot of job readiness skills, or are interested in construction, but haven't actually learned the industry recognized version of the skills training. So we're partnering with our community action agency, Social Development Commission, who is providing a training program with about 10 different industry recognized credentials. And after completion of that program, we have paid work experience opportunities on job sites. So at no cost to contractors, Employ Milwaukee serves as the employer of record. We'll place these trained job seekers who are provided all of the equipment, supportive services. They can make life work, transportation, childcare, and they can actually go on the site, get work experience. And the contractor and the potential employee can kind of gauge the fit. And then the third tier is that we actually provide on-the-job training funds. So if there is a fit, the worker can join the crew of this small contractor and will offset the wages when they become an employee up to 75% for a limited amount of time. And again, it's focused on City of Milwaukee job seekers and city contractors, mostly small businesses. And then the final component is similar to what Darrell was talking about. We're trying to support the small businesses. So we've hired a consultant that will work with any and all city business to assist them with the sometimes complicated process of bidding on this city work. And that includes hiring processes, business planning, license applications, loan and line of credit processes, cost accounting, QuickBooks setup, and all of that back of the house stuff that they really need. So our hope is that not only do job seekers get connected into this work, but we're building a talent pipeline. So once our public health crisis is over, these people can slot into the infrastructure jobs and help with building roads and bridges and the other things that we really need here.
That's so great. And it's interesting. It reminded me of Atlanta is using some of its ARPA funds to do a matchmaking service to help those small businesses, especially those from disadvantaged communities, get matchmaking with technical assistance, whether that's accounting or any of the other back-end support that you need to successfully do business with the city. So I think we have time for a lightning round, if you're all okay with it. So in 30 seconds or less, can you each share one piece of advice for the city leaders who are on the call today on how to accelerate their workforce goals? And I'm going to start with Mayor Shore.
30 seconds. You got to put all the pieces together. You got to look at all the different angles of the problem, and really put some resources into each of them is what we see. Because if you just attack one, you're leaving things off the table and you're leaving people unrepresented and unhelped.
Fantastic. Mayor Lock-Dawson?
Plan, strategize, and execute, right? And everybody has a role in that strategy. Everybody's got a role to play. And to Mayor Shore's point, everybody has something different to do within those roles as to execute the overall strategy and goal of being #1 workforce development city in the world, right? I mean, you set your goal very high, then you make your plan and you lay it out and you get it done. And don't think you know everything. Make sure you bring folks in that can help you.
Good words. Darrell?
So sorry. I think people should look at what we call in Massachusetts the Massport model. So really requiring that any state government or a local government contract in the city of Boston, can't remember, has at least 20-25% diversity as part of the contractor's RFP. So, and part of that should be technical assistance that you're providing to all these companies, because we know if they get the technical assistance that's required, that's needed, that they will create more jobs along the way.
Great. And last, Julie.
If you're not already connected to your local workforce development board, make that connection. It can be really useful. In Louisville, they're obviously doing that already, which is wonderful. The city of Milwaukee, and it sounds like Riverside as well. And it's really important because we are experts in that area. So you don't have to worry necessarily about how to develop a workforce development plan. You can just tap into the system, and we have funding. So you can leverage our funding, and we pursue funding, and we can do that in conjunction with you, and we can help you build a system.
That's such great advice, and making sure we're not duplicating efforts and running in parallel when we could all be going together. Thank you to all of our panelists for the sage advice that you shared with the city leaders on the webinar today. I know that I found it really helpful and want to make sure we get out all the resources that you've been sharing with us, and making sure that folks know that they're not in this alone, that there are other cities who've done this. There's other companies who can help you along the way, like Interise, to be able to achieve more and go further together. So I'm going to turn it back to Michelle to start our poll and share some other resources out with you. But thank you today.
Thank you
Happy
all.
Infrastructure Week.
Happy Infrastructure Week to all of you. Thank you, Jamie. So as Jamie said, we are going to launch our poll now and encourage you all to give us your thoughts and comments. And while you're filling out this poll, I just wanted to go through a few announcements. The local infrastructure hub is launching 5 new boot camps to help small and mid-sized cities develop competitive applications for federal infrastructure grant programs, including the Combined Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, the Neighborhood Access and Equity Grants, the Bridge Investment Program, and several broadband opportunities. The registration for the new boot camps, which are led by the National League of Cities, is open through May 31st. And so to register, you can sign up through the link that's in the chat, or after this on the National League of Cities or the Infrastructure Hub websites. As a reminder, we share all materials, including our 5 winning strategies for incorporating workforce provisions in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law projects. It'll be on our website. It'll be on localinfrastructurehub.org. So thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you next time.